go.
Okay, we are recording. Hello, everybody. Looks like we've got close to 40 people on the line.
Nice.
And hopefully you guys all got and were able to see the agenda that we sent out. So today's gonna kind of all be about accessibility things. So kind of some thoughts about it, best practices, tools you can use, kind of why we are talking about it. And then I'm hoping that everybody has your questions, thinking caps on, because we're going to leave a good amount of time at the end to answer any questions that you have. So let's go. So Rob, I know you have some things you want to talk about, so I'll turn it over to you.
I don't have anything to say.
Nothing to say.
I never have anything to say. Oh, no. Well, welcome back, everyone. I know we didn't do too many of these last year, particularly at the end of the year. There was so many things going on that we just kept pushing it out. And every time Teresa met, we're like, I don't think we're ready yet. But we're definitely ready. Welcome to 2020. Thanks for taking a little time out of your Tuesday to come hang with us. And we're going to talk about accessibility, and we're going to talk in depth. We'll get a little bit technical. I like to push this group a little bit by getting into the technical nitty gritty, because I think, you know, that's where we all are. We're in the WCMS, we're in our websites, we're in HTML and CSS and all that stuff. So we'll dig into some browser tools and accessibility testing tools a little bit later. But I want to start with this. Well, let's start with, the easy stuff, which is why accessibility is important to all of us. And there's of course legal reasons. We're a public service entity, so we have responsibilities under the federal law and state law to provide accessible content on our websites, and that's the obvious reason. The less obvious reasons are to improve search engine optimization. It's kind of a joke that the most popular siteless website user in the world is Google, the Google search engine, and Google's search spiders. So having the actual underlying content on your website be structured properly and marked up properly is important for search engine optimization. The other reason is just for the sake of clarity. As a university that is actively recruiting folks from other countries and cultures, languages, it's important that our content be accessible in that it is clear and it's clearly marked up and it makes sense when read. Another aspect of this, which is a little bit more complicated, I won't get too much into, is that a lot of users in other countries are going to have native translation tools built into their browsers, or they're going to be using the translation tools that are built into their browsers. So for a lot of other users, they're going to come to the UC Santa Cruz page, and then a little thing's going to come down and say, do you want to translate this site? Well, that translation is dependent on clear, well marked up HTML and clear language. So accessibility is not just for the obvious reasons, there's non-obvious reasons as well. So that's why we're thinking about it. Today we're going to focus on the more obvious reason, which is to provide accessible content under the rules and the law. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I want to share with you a report. Oh, it's been so long. I forgot how to share my screen. Let's go here first. Okay. So I pulled up a report here. This is it's a recent report from the campus audit group, and it was basically a look at 23 UC Santa Cruz websites. And this was using the Site Improve tool that you may have heard of. I think we've shown it on a previous in a previous web users group meeting. And so this Site Improve tool gives a overall score to a site. And I wish I could break that down a little bit further, but for today, we'll just say this is the accessibility score. And it also allows you to compare that against other known university websites. And so what you're seeing here is a graph or a chart table of the 23 sites that were checked and what their score was, and a color coding based on whether they were below this benchmark for university websites. And if your site's on here, we're not trying to shame anyone or anything like that. It's just a glance, and there's no harm in seeing where we score and where we can improve. So I just wanted to share this as a starting point, and I'll share this report out after at the end. It'll be in the notes that we send out after the presentation today, so you'll be able to see. Unfortunately, Site Improve is still only in limited availability. There have been some attempts to try to roll it out as a service, make it available for everyone, but it's a little bit resource intensive to make sure that everyone gets trained and gets in there. So it hasn't happened yet. I don't know if Teresa, if that's something that's going to change soon or.
No, I mean, we definitely want to have it be a campus tool, but we just don't have the it's the user management is pretty intensive, like you said, Rob. And so kind of managing users, connecting those users to all the sites that people are using, and then kind of maintaining all of that. We're very labor intensive, and we just haven't had a accessibility person identified in our actually on our campus, like someone that's dedicated to accessibility, which we were hoping this person could be, in charge of that. So it's kind of on hold, though, people can request an account, and, you can put a ticket in, we can give you an account. We just can't kind of train you on it and kind of maintain all of that. It's just, so if if you're dying to get in there, just put a ticket in and we can help you with that, or get you an account. But it's a little bit hands off right now. So unfortunately, that's the story.
And to take appropriate responsibility here, as it states in the report itself, a lot of sites are in the WCMS, and some of the accessibility issues that Site Improve mentions are WCMS issues. So they're out of your hands. You're washed of responsibility. They're issues with the style sheet or in the templates, which is above the responsibility of most users. That said, what we're going to talk about today is some of the real basic stuff that you can be doing on your site, and that I took a look at a couple sites and saw, and I want to call out so that we're not making any easy errors. That your site is accessible and the content is accessible as it can be, given the access level that you have. So I also want to say that we mostly weren't aware that this audit was going on. So I just heard about it 2 weeks ago and decided, hey, this would be a good topic to bring to the whole group so that we can just always be on top of whatever accessibility stuff is going on, and make sure it's always a part of our conversation here. As content owners, it's our responsibility, and I also, it's cool. I just like this stuff. So hopefully you find it as interesting as I do. This chart, see there are a few that scored above the benchmark, and it's interesting to see that we're all the ones that are below the benchmark are right around in the same level, which means that probably some of these things are template level things, and maybe we can bump the numbers up from there. But then also, again, like I said, we're going to talk about some things that need that are content related, need some attention. So I'm going to, so I kind of cherry picked a site only because I was working on it yesterday and just happened to notice that that there was some issues on it. And this is not to shame anyone. Again, it's just really, I think it helps to see the actual work that needs to be done and see the things that can be improved. So I'm going to switch over to, let's see here. Switch and share a different screen. And okay, I'm going to jump on the Dean of Students site here. And again, this is not to call anyone individually out. This is just to, I was here yesterday on the site doing some other work about the announcement and the campus message. So I just happened to take a look and say, oh, maybe I can use this site as an example of some things for accessibility. So because most of when some ability, the first thing you hear is you need alt tags on your images. And as cliche as it sounds and as repetitive as it is, it's true. You need alt tags on your images. And so it is the low-hanging fruit of accessibility. And that is because a lot of times images are used the only thing in the link and there's no alt text on it, and that link is essentially empty. Assistive technology, Google has no idea what that link is about. And so it's important to have alt text on images. And we've talked about this before. Alt text is either a description of what's in the image, or if the image has text, it is as much of that text as is appropriate to convey the same level of information. So I'm going to just go in here, and I'm in Google Chrome, and I'm going to do some. If you open Google Chrome, you can do this too, which is I'm going to right click on this image here. I'm going to click inspect. How many people, oh, I can't do that, can I? If you're familiar with DevTools, your browser's DevTools, developer tools, if you're familiar with that, go ahead and like say yes in chat or something, something to indicate. I don't know, we can't raise hands here, can we? Okay, cool, yeah, I can watch the chat number increment. Great. Good. So that's about like maybe a third or more or less, or fourth quarter. Okay. Almost all, even more, good. I'm glad to see that. Almost all modern browsers have developer tools now. This used to be something, so I don't mean to go all old man on you, but way back when you had to add it as a plugin. But now all browsers have developer tools built in. And there's usually either a right-click shortcut, or there is a keyboard shortcut, or both. But most of the time, you just have to right-click somewhere on a web page and look for the word inspect, click inspect, and then your developer tools will pop up. And over the years, developer tools have gotten quite rich and loaded with all kinds of information. Chrome in particular has great developer tools, and that's what I'm going to be using today. But if you use Firefox, if you use Safari, they all have developer tools as well. But today we're going to work in Chrome. So if you want help with other browsers, I can maybe do that during the Q&A. But what I did was I clicked inspect on the image, but I'll just go over here and show you another way, which is once developer tools are open, there's almost always like this little target finding button of some kind that will allow you to find something and target it specifically. So I'm going to go again to one of these images. And what happens is that highlights that part of the HTML in the source panel down here. So now I can see that particular image tag that's showing the query image. And what can you see? Right here, you can see that the alt tag is empty. So for assistive technology, this is a link that has a target, but has no description, no text. And so there's no way to know what this link is about. And that's what a lot of assistive technology does. It comes to a page, it runs through the HTML, and it describes the page, or it allows the user to navigate the page via text. In this case, this link has no text. So because of the way WCMS was originally set up, we don't make alt tags required. We don't make alt text required. So it's not gonna, like, you're not gonna get a notice in WCMS saying you can't save the page or you can't upload the image or something like that because there's no alt text. So we don't have that ability to enforce it. But just imagine that if you leave it off, someone's coming here and this doesn't mean anything to them. It's this big portion of the page. We've made billboards a primary region of the page. They take up a lot of space, but if you're using assistive technology to navigate the page, this might as well be blank. So coming in here and putting in alt text for all of your billboards is just a key element. And I'm looking down at another one here, and I can see, I don't know how big this is for everyone. I can try to zoom a little bit. Can I do that? Let's find out. I'm not sure if I can. Let's try this. Ooh, look at that. Cool. Okay, I can. So here's another billboard. The alt text is missing. In fact, almost all the billboards, all the billboards on this page don't have alt text. So if I were recommending changes to meet accessibility standards in here, I would recommend first thing to put alt text on these images, especially because almost all of them have some kind of text. And this first billboard is illustrating another fundamental aspect of accessibility, which is using the phrase "click here." It's very common, goes all the way back to the beginning of the web. I'm sure the very first web page ever said "click here" to go to another page. Isn't this amazing? Click here does not convey any kind of meaning about where that link goes. And that's what you're trying to do when you create a link. You want to link text, include text in the link, or somehow describe where that link goes, what it means, what clicking on it means. And click here doesn't do that. And so if you have a page full of click here for this, or click here for that, or click here for this and that, if you just selected click here, all that's all the assistive technology would do is just read off. At least for screen readers, you would just hear click here, click here, click here. And even if you say click here for, there's better ways to do it. You can just say, here's more information about this, or the report is about such and such, and you link that text. There's usually a way to write a plain English sentence that you could read to someone else and just make that into a link. And again, for clarity's sake, it's helpful to do it that way. I'm gonna scroll down a little bit, and we'll just go here to this next row. And over here on the right, we see slug support, very important aspect of campus support that's provided to students. And we've got this image here, and there's a bunch of text in it. So we're gonna go down, I'm gonna right click, click on inspect. Oh, and they've got alt text. So in this one, at least this link is descriptive and is providing the text that's in this image in the alt text. Now, yes, this is good because the text in the image is in the alt. However, is it good to put text in images in general? And the answer is not really. And I don't want to say no, but it's not really. There are certain circumstances where it might make sense to do that, but the problem is, and it's kind of an interesting, it's like a newer issue, If this was the only way I was ever going to see this image on my big giant desktop screen in a well-lit room, I would say it's okay to have the setup like this. However, oops, let me go back to DevTools. However, I may be on my phone. I'm just gonna drag this window down. I might be on my phone, which is a much smaller screen. I could be outside where the sun's shining on it and it's glaring. I could have set my phone to a larger default font size, because you can do that. You can go into settings on your phone and set it to zoom, and so all of your text is big and giant. I was going to make a grandma joke, but I actually know people in their 40s who do that. So
hey, I do.
see, that's why I didn't make that joke.
I totally do.
I didn't make that joke because, yeah.
Okay. I'm pushing 50. I get it.
Having text in images removes the ability of the user to set the font size of that text, and we want to allow the user to set their own font sizes. Accessibility guidelines say that a user should be able to zoom a website 500%, 5 times, whatever it is when you've got it all beautiful in Photoshop. A user should be able to zoom it up 5 times. That's really big. That's huge. But some people need that. And some people need somewhere in between. Some people only need 2 times. But this takes that ability away because it's only ever one size and it's only ever one format. And so that's another reason to avoid that kind of thing in having text in images. Again, this is another feature of DevTools, which is called responsive design mode. It's this button over here next to the target selector button. And it allows you to just drag your viewport narrow and wide to see a web page at different sizes and see how it converts for responsive design. Okay, I'm going to keep scrolling down here, and we've got another image, and I'm just going to click on this one and inspect that. Looks like the alt tag is hate. So I'm going to guess that that's not user added, that it could be something else. I'm not totally sure.
If an alt tag is not entered, I think the WCMS, I think what it does is it grabs the name of the image. Maybe.
Sometimes it does. Yeah, I know in some circumstances it does. I'm seeing like a different. Yeah, I'm seeing a different image name here.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But it's
put hate in, that could be.
A screen reader is going to come over this, and it's just going to read out that word. So it's important, again, to, I don't mean to keep hitting this, but it's important to have a proper descriptive text in your images. Okay, so I'm going to switch out of responsive design mode over here. I'm going to zoom this back down a bit. Maybe not that much. Another thing that we have, and I'll take responsibility for this one, is color contrast. Color contrast is really important because for folks with vision impairments, and even if again, going back to the whole thing with being on your phone out in the sun, a little bit of glare can really make it hard to read text if it's not properly contrasted from its background. So and this is something that we'll be changing globally, because I noticed it in the accessibility report. Up here in the search box for websites, oh, I love that it shows. Thank goodness my previous searches are not embarrassing. So funny. The text up here in the search box, I'm going to see if I can zoom into that a bit. So the text up here in the search box is not dark enough against the white background. And that is something that showed up in the accessibility report, and you'll see it in the DevTools tool that I use in a few minutes as well. And so this is something that has to change. It used to be kind of a fad. It was kind of a cool thing. It's like, oh yeah, it's you can see what happens here is once we start typing, I guess we didn't do it. It used to be cool to have it be light, and then as soon as you type on it, it either goes away or it lightens up more. That's what we do here. It lightens up more. But what happens is it's hard to read this text, and so this text should be darker, and that's just so that it can be seen and it's obvious what it's for. Okay. And that's something that will change in the coming weeks in the style sheet globally. So if you see it in any of your testing and stuff, it's something that we will fix. So we talked earlier about, and this report was generated from SiteImprove. SiteImprove is a tool that was contracted from the University of California to use against all of the websites, and our campus has access to it. It's the only tool, and there are a lot of tools, and I'm going to show you one today that integrates down here with the developer tools. And this is a free plugin for Chrome called Axe, A-X-E. And what it does is, as long as you have a page loaded, it'll just run a quick analysis of the page that you're on and show accessibility issues. So I'm just going to go down here. So what I did, I'll go back and start all over, is inspect like I did before. The developer tools pops up, and once you have the Axe plugin installed, it just adds another tab up here to the top of the dev tools window. And sometime we'll have to do another thing about dev tools because there's so much stuff, so much cool stuff going on in here. But I'm going to go all the way to the end, which is the Axe one. I'm going to click Analyze. And what it did was just run a quick accessibility test on the page that I'm on. And you can see the first one is the one that I just mentioned, which is contrast between foreground and background colors meets WCAG 2 AA contrast ratio thresholds. Just means that this text is not dark enough. And so it's showing me the element source and ways that I can fix it.
So Rob, this is a page by page, or is there a way to use that plugin to say, put the whole URL of the site in and have it comb through the whole site and get a report? Is this just
this is page by page. Yeah, this is page by page. I can look into tools that do other things, but I almost kind of recommend this because it's a little bit more manageable. You don't feel as overwhelmed by having to, oh, I got to fix something on every page. And it does make sense to just start at the home page and click around, do a few pages a day or do a few pages at a time. Because it does a couple of things. One, it gives you a sense for what these issues might be, and you'll develop a little bit of a sixth sense for it, so that when you're updating other pages, you'll know, oh yeah, I gotta remember to put that alt tag on there. Oh yeah, that's that text, you know, I set a inline style and it's too dark or too light. I'm sorry, too light, something like that. So it kind of builds a muscle of awareness in your content editing skills, so that you kind of get a sense for it. So I almost going page by page.
I'm going to also mention that those, you know, Rob showing you the HTML and the kind of that developer resource, if that makes you like squeamish, like, it's kind of, I don't want to do that. I mean, it's good to look at it and to know, and, you know, if you just wanted to get a little geeky, you can do that. However, when it comes time to actually, like, you find an image without alt text, you don't have to use the code to add it. You can just edit the page in, you know, the WCMS or Drupal, wherever your site is, and actually add it in that, you know, the editor.
Yeah.
You don't have to type it in the code at that point.
Yes.
More just to identify where they are, and then you can go in and actually edit it in the the more friendly way. if
Exactly.
coding is not.
Yeah, no, that sorry, I didn't mention that ahead of time. Yeah, you would see the errors here and you'd see the code, but then it would be going into WCMS to update it and make changes. And I also want to say, if you do feel squeamish about DevTools, take a Buddhist approach, sit with that. It does take a while to get used to, but it's a really powerful tool. You can find, you can learn a lot from just looking at this stuff and letting the osmosis, learning through osmosis of just paying attention to the way the code is structured, what the HTML looks like. Properly marked up HTML is user readable once you get used to it. And you can see like that's a paragraph, so it's wrapped in a p tag. This is an image, so it has an img tag. This is a headline, so it has an h1 or an h1 through h6. It's a good thing to become aware of how these things come together, because it will make you a better better content author. I always feel like having a little bit of code awareness is good, and it takes some time, but I would say like DevTools are free. They're right here. Anytime you have an issue on your website, just pop them open and see if it makes sense what might be wrong. It's good for troubleshooting. I would say like on our team, we're in DevTools all the time, just looking at all kinds of different things. I can really quickly just throw another great aspect of it is if you have an image in your HTML and you hover over that, you get so much information. You get a little preview of the image, you get the full URL to the image, and you get the dimensions right there. So if you're ever, I frequently get asked like, hey, what are the sizes on the billboards for the homepage? And I'll just pop open, because I usually forget. I know it's 1080, but I always forget how tall. I just pop open DevTools, go to one and take a look. It's supposed to be 348, I think, but that one's at 300. Anyway, there's a lot to get from DevTools, and I could go on and on. I'll go back here to the accessibility plugin, and I'm going to go to the second one here. And this was an issue that we talked about, which is links must have discernible text. So in this case, because the link has an image tag in it, that image tag needs needs alternative description, and it doesn't have one. So there are 8 violations of that rule on this page. And again, like Teresa,
just to point out, like how he is seeing that there's nothing. It says image all equals, and then there's 2 quotes. There should be text in between those 2 quotes, if that makes sense. So just in case you weren't aware of what he was actually showing you, where it's missing, that's what he's seeing is that those empty little things.
Yeah.
So
this guy here. And so you would go into WCMS, and for the billboard configuration, there's a field in there. I forget what it says, but it's like text description or alternative text, something along those lines. This is an issue that is site-wide, and it's not an issue that you need to worry about on a home page, but that there should be an H1 at least on every page, a level 1 heading. And on home pages, unfortunately, the way they're configured, we don't do that, mostly because there are these boxes of content, and these all get H2s and H3s. There is no H1 on the page, and that's something that you don't have to worry about, something that we'll have to figure out, or that will be fixed in the next iteration of the site. I'm going to go to another page here just to do this again. So now we're on like maybe I'll go to a different page. Oh boy, yeah, maybe I'll try a different page. Let's go. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I just didn't want to go to a page where there will be bigger issues. So we have a standard left column page here, and a little bit of text. Maybe here's another image. I'm just going to click Analyze. We get the same color contrast issue. related to the search box. Links must have discernible text. Looks like, oh, this is another one down here. It's these guys. These social media icons is something that we configured this during the last, not redesign, but the beige lift a couple years ago. And there's still some accessibility issues with them. So again, this is something that we need to work on, and you don't have to worry about. Looks like on this page, everything is mostly up to snuff. I do want to mention something here though. And I, again, don't mean to harp on this too much, but this is where accessibility becomes a little bit subjective. This meets guidelines, right? It has an alt text, and the alt text happens to be the image, the file name. This is what Teresa was mentioning, is sometimes it'll be the file name. So here you have an image with a bunch of text on it. A lot of information is on this image. But for assistive technology, all there is the file name. And so while this does meet accessibility guidelines, it wouldn't get flagged. I would not call this accessible. And so this is where you have to make judgment calls sometimes. This stuff should probably be in HTML. There's a lot here. I mean, there's like where to go for a room if you need something. So something to pay attention to is sometimes you can meet the guidelines, but you want to be also meeting the spirit of accessibility, which is that the content is available to everyone. One more thing I'm going to point out is this is the pane that I've been showing you, the not pane, that pane, this pane. Window pane is for the Axe plugin, and this is the plugin that you can install in Chrome. Natively, Chrome DevTools has this Audits tab, and in the Audits tab, you can also do an accessibility check. And you do that the same way. You come to a page, and you click Run Audits, and what it will do, it's going to run several different audits. I should have turned more of them off, but going to take a second here. But you get a similar kind of thing of like, here's how well, and this is a performance one. So this is like how fast and how quickly does the site load. Properly sized images, interesting. I'm going to scroll down to the accessibility one. So again, a high accessibility score. Because for the most part, most of this page is accessible. You've just got text, but you've got this one image. And so again, it's not always going to be clear that something isn't accessible. You have to use your judgment on this, but when it comes to images, paying attention to what's in them is really important. So this one is built into Chrome. So if you don't do anything else but open Chrome and open developer tools, you can do an audit on a particular page. And if you have a page that you're building, like you're building a new part of the site or something like that, it helps to just run this on it really quick and get a sense for whether you're building accessible content or not.
I'm going to chime in with a rando fact. So I just did a quick search, and I remember this, and I'm actually surprised by this number because I thought it was a little bit less, but I just did a kind of a search on like what percentage of web traffic actually uses some sort of, or has some sort of disability or maybe use assistive technology. And it says between 15 and 20% of your traffic could come from users with some sort of disability. And so if there's ever that little nagging like, oh, this is worth it, you know, it is. It's not a tiny percentage of people that are coming, and it's not just people that are visually impaired. It's, you know, there's a lot of different, you know, disabilities and needs for assistive technology. So that's just one little reason why you should care. So
yeah, definitely. So 1 in 5 people is using some sort of assistive technology when they come to the site. That could be anything from having the page zoomed a little bit, having the page zoomed a couple times, to using a specific kind of pointer that isn't a mouse. Could be an interesting one that has come up in the last year is having their entire user interface set to dark mode because of brightness and issues with dealing with brightness and bright light. So there's a lot to think about. And
it's people that could have temporary disabilities, right? I had eye surgery, so or I had a surgery on my hand, so I can't use my mouse, and so I need to be able to verbally go through. So there's it's a bigger than you think, and so yeah,
that was me last year. I had hand surgery, and for 2 weeks I used a little bit of dictation.
Mm-hmm.
I used my left hand to mouse instead of my right. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but it was a good it was a good lesson in making sure that I was aware of all that stuff. The last thing I want to mention, because I don't want to go too long, and we've only really talked about images and alt text. I do want to mention one more thing, and that is the proper use of headlines. So you saw on one of those ACTS reports, it said there should be an H1 on every page. There definitely should be an H1 on every page. So I'm just going to right-click this, and we can look in DevTools and see that it is the H1 for this page. It's typically, it should be the page title. It used to be a time where everyone made the site title the H1, but that just means you have a bunch of pages where the first headline is the same thing. So we make the page title the H1, and from there down, a properly accessible page will use a hierarchy of headline tags. So you want H1s to be followed by H2s, followed by H3s if the content goes in that level of outline. Some pages will only just have H2s because those are different chunks of content and they're just separated by headlines. But headlines are really important because, one, they break up the content. I think we've talked about this in a previous meeting. I use the word chunking, content chunking is something that gets done with headlines. So you break up large chunks of text into smaller chunks so that they're more easily digestible. Also, it's just an assist to your viewer. They're typically skimming the page. They're just looking, is this what I need? Is this the information I need? Is this the information I need? That's just a process going on in the background, and headlines help convey that. This is where I need to be because this is the headline that's describing what comes underneath it. I want to make this point because this is the most common issue I see, is that a paragraph wrapped in bold tags is not a headline. It's not a headline for Google. It's not a headline for assistive technology. Particularly screen readers will come to a page and they will read the document outline. The document outline consists of all the headlines and all the headline tags that are on the page. So if you make all the headlines visually out of a paragraph, for assistive technology, it doesn't. So it means that those headlines actually won't get read out loud to the viewer, particularly for screen readers. So that's another thing to pay attention to.
And it does help your search engine optimization because Google does goes through URLs, it goes through page titles, headers, and then headers, and then content. So if you have headers, those are going to be, it's going to help your searching results come up faster, and I don't know what the right word is for that, but the results are better when you have properly used headers rather than just taking, like he said, formatting a word to make it seem like a header, but it's not. And I know there have been issues in the past with kind of our styles where people don't like the size of the fonts for the different, heading at H2, H3, H4 things. And so they kind of decide not to use them because they're either too big or it just looks a little, but you know, that's what it is right now. So
I know. Personal opinions differ. I know, and I'm aware that like on our site in particular, H2s and H3s aren't very well differentiated. I know that's something that's been mentioned to us a few times, and I'm looking at seeing if I can make some kind of change to that with these other accessibility updates that we're going to make in the next couple of weeks. And actually, I think I have that. Yeah. So here's an H2, and here's an H3. There's a little bit of a size difference, but probably not as much contrast as there should be. But this is a page, I was just working on this yesterday because of the campus message and some of the changes around graduate students. And so this is a page full of headlines. And the way I did it was, there's a question, that's an H2. And then in the answer, if there are any sections within the answer, those are H3s. Come back to another question here, that's another H2, and so on, all the way down the page. Might have gone the other direction, actually, it could be H2, H3, and H4. But just to emphasize that, that headlines are important, how your headlines are organized and structured is important, and you will get an accessibility flag if you say have H3s and H4s mixed together and the hierarchy from H1 to H6 isn't stable or reliable or easily fitted into an outline. So those are the two things I wanted to mention, because those are the two things I think you can do today or start thinking about as you update sites that will instantly improve accessibility scores and improve SEO as well, and just make sites and pages easier to skim and read and understand. So it has can't even overstate the amount of benefits it has to thinking about that stuff when you're updating content. I realized I've been yammering on for
well, we've had a couple
50
questions
minutes.
come in related to accessibility. So, and I don't know the answer, and you might not either, Rob, but we could, if we don't know the answer to these questions, and we'll get back to you on them. But the first one is, it says,
They're my favorite.
What?
Hard questions are my favorite.
Got some smart folks here. So are banner images of different heights considered an accessibility issue? I can imagine that having the lower part of the page jump would be hard for folks with a narrow range of vision or visual tracking difficulties.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. We don't enforce height on billboards, mostly because we just don't. Typically we don't enforce height on images that we enforce width on, and that is because you end up with a lot of distorted images. If we were to say all billboards are 1080 by 348, it is a thing that happens on other sites where an image that's a different size gets uploaded, and then the aspect ratio is broken. So we've never enforced height. But what that does mean is that yes, you should be consistent with the height of your billboards so that content doesn't jump around. Moving content and page jumping and stuff is an accessibility issue. So if you do see that, and that's a really good question, actually demonstrated well, and I should have mentioned it here. It is something to avoid, because content moving around, particularly what I'll do is if I go down to this page, right, is it moving? Yeah. If I go down on this page a little bit, as I scroll down, this content's moving around a little bit, and I can't even see why. And that's really the biggest concern, is that there's no way to tell why things are moving the way they are, given the changing billboards up above. Good question. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, next one. Are hashtags related to any accessibility issues? For example, we have a menu item on our top nav that is hashtag NewSlug2020. Is it just
That's a good question. In general, I would say, yeah, that's probably not a good idea because it's out of context. It it's not on Twitter, it's not on Instagram, it's not in the context in which we understand hashtags to exist. Having it be like a navigation item can be a bit confusing, and I would say mostly because it's out of context, but also if that's not common in other places, thinking again about our international students um, and how they understand the web to work, that might be confusing. I don't know what assistive technology does. I'm sure it probably just reads it out loud. So like a screen reader might say pound sign or something like that. Or if it's a really pedantic screen reader, Octothorpe or something along those lines. So I would say it's probably better to not do that.
Okay. Next question. It says, if in scanning our sites, we come across an issue that we can't fix because it's a WCMS issue, should we make ITS aware of that? Or do we assume that we are aware of the issue?
What do you think, Teresa?
I think that if ITS is made aware of it, it's going to go to you, Rob. Because it's like, I personally actually would like to know what those are, because it's a place for us to start really inventorying, because I will say, no, we are not aware of all the accessibility issues. At least I'm not. So, but yeah, if I am not ever opposed to folks opening a ticket with a question or concern, and then we can basically say, yeah, actually, we're aware of that, or thank you for noting it. We'll put it on our list, and so far, so always feel free to open a ticket or put a question in. That's definitely legit. And then, Rob and I can work on kind of a plan of attack for those things. So.
Yeah, I agree. So many things are hard, especially at the global level. When we know we're affecting 320 sites, it can be hard to put a fix in place. These footer icons with the social media icons, they were difficult to figure out. And there's, like I said, there is still an accessibility issue with them, but it's hard to do and not affect you all. So I would say definitely report it. Whether or not we can do something about it immediately is always up in the air, but I like to know. I like to hear about them.
For sure. And Detmar says maybe having a known issue list would be helpful for folks. That's a good idea.
Good point. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Rob's writing that down right now.
I'm committing it to pen.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea, because we really have been promoting out like this accessibility awareness like across the campus and everything, not just web or digital, but like, and I think it would be helpful for folks to know kind of like, what we're working on.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for not only showing your work, but showing your work progress. So I like that idea because we can have that list, but then also update it when things have been resolved,
fixed, and
so
this,
that,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm reading. Hold on, hold please. I need a minute to read this question. Talks amongst yourselves for a second.
I'm gonna unshare my screen.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I'm gonna put a few links in the, I was about to say show notes. This isn't a podcast.
In our show,
so
our
often.
Tony show.
I'm gonna put a few links in. The British government does accessibility, at least provides resources really well. Gov.uk is just such a great shining example of how to set expectations and standards around accessibility. And they have a couple of tools. One of them is profiles of users who need or use accessible technology, and it's great because
Mhm.
it's very it's diverse, and so you get a sense of all the different kinds of assistive technologies and needs. So I'm going to share this link, and then another one is they have these accessibility posters that are nice little visual guides, easy to digest, that provide some tips on how to build content in an accessible way for different kinds of users. And the thing is you might think like, oh, I'm doing for this, so it's gonna be bad for this. And it's really more about like, if I do things with the focus on clarity and easy content consumption, you usually meet all of these things. So I don't want you to think it can be overwhelming to think, oh, I have to do all these different things for all these different people. What you're really doing is just focusing on clarity, easy consumption, perceivability, and then you end up getting a long way down all of these lists. They're pretty basic common sense things, and I just find it really helpful to scroll through this as a reference guide for when we're putting something together. So I'll share both of these links in the show
That's great.
notes.
So the person that asked this long question, I'm gonna try to summarize it. And basically the question is, this person is publishing pages, and then when they're going to, they're on the website, they go to the pages, they're seeing an older version of the page. And then they kind of click back, and then it's different. And then they try to republish everything. So might be an issue, but I haven't heard of that. It's either two things. One is that there's some browser caching, right? So if someone went to the page before, then they go to before, and it's kind of remembers where they were, and it hasn't refreshed. So kind of a refresh would fix that. And then also it could be that the actual publishing, it didn't, the correct pages didn't get published. That could be another situation as well. I always say, when you're editing pages and you're working on pages and you're making changes, publish the folders that you worked in. Because more often than not, left navigation, linking errors, broken links are a result of not publishing kind of the hierarchy of all of that. So if you've added pages, removed, deleted, move things around, just publish the folders you worked in, and that'll really update all of your links. So it's either kind of, you need to publish a little, at a higher level, the folder that you worked in potentially, or there's a browser caching issue with kind of the browser remembering the content, and you just have to kind of refresh, clear your cache, and that. If those two things are not addressing the issue, then please open a ticket, and then we can kind of try to recreate the issue. So that, I hope, answered-ish that question. And then we had another one from another user. It says, are there any accessibility issues related to online forms that we should be aware of?
Love that question. Great question. I'm going to share my screen again. It's one of my favorite questions. Let's see, where am I sharing my screen? Over here. Okay. This over here. So issues related to online forms. Two things I would say to focus on. One thing is to make sure that your form input, that the form itself is the proper one for the type of information you're collecting. So form inputs used to be just like text and bigger text. There are other kinds of form inputs now. You can have an email one that will check the validity of the email in the browser. There are ones for numbers, things like that. I can send a reference for the different kinds of form elements that you can have. So that's one thing, is to make sure that whatever your form input is, that it matches the type of information you're collecting. The second one is that the form is tab navigable. So it's very common, and I didn't bring this up even though I'm just a total nut about keyboard navigation, because if you have to go to your mouse, then you shouldn't have to go to your mouse to navigate a web page. And I can demonstrate that in a second. But I'm just going to go to this form here, and I'm on the first input field, and I should be able to tab. Just by hitting tab, I should be able to navigate. I'm using the arrow keys now to move the radio buttons around. I should be able to tab and shift tab to go backwards through this entire form. So I don't need to touch my mouse to get through this entire form. I'm really hoping the CAPTCHA works. It does. So I can go like that. Hit the space bar, CAPTCHA comes up. Okay, go away. So that's the second thing I think is just really key, is that the form can be navigated by tabbing through it. Those are the two things. A third thing that's smaller is that when there's an error in the form, it's clearly marked. That's that you can see in this form. If let's see, if I do something, what would I do? If I just go blah, 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 like that, it's not going to indicate it. I was trying to make an error to show that. It's showing these tooltips for what should be in here, but I was trying to pull up an error. It's not gonna, I'm gonna have to go through the whole CAPTCHA thing, so I won't do it, but errors should be easily visible.
So note on that, Detmar says error checking can be inaccessible if the screen reader, if a pop-up's used it for the error message, maybe the screen reader can't read the pop-up. So, but there are also a couple of questions that came in related to Google Forms. Are Google Forms already accessible? From what I've Googled, honestly, and what I've seen, I believe
you asked Google if their
Google
forms are accessible?
Their forms are accessible.
Okay.
But I have not tested Google Forms for accessibility. I think, I mean, you'd hope Google's Google and they know, you know, so, but it'd be interesting to actually look at a form and actually see if it meets those accessibility. So I don't know the answer, but if you Google it, Google says their forms are accessible, because I've been asked that question before. And pretty much Google things in general are do pretty well with accessibility scanning, from what I hear.
I've heard that there had been issues in the past around accessible Google Forms, but that they've improved.
Yeah.
One way you can test, again, is like a very common way that assistive technology will run through a form is through the tab key. It's a very common way of going through forms. I just want to show, just to re-emphasize that whole thing about keyboard navigation, is our entire site does work that way too. So when you come to a page and just hit tab, what that will do is activate a hidden link to the main content. So the first thing that you can do as a accessible technology user is come to the site, hit tab, hit return, and that takes you right to the main element in the HTML, which is the main content. And that works on every page that's in WCMS. Just tabbing and hitting return will take you to the main content. In addition, we have, let me see if I can, yeah, we have, this is kind of a browser standard, and we just make sure that it works, is that we have focus styles for all of the, basically the hover style is the same as the focus style. So when a link receives focus, it is indicated visually so that you can tab through all of the, except for the drop down. We're working on that. For most of the navigation, it's like old code. Sorry, you're seeing like the skeletons in my closet. I can show an example real quick on the new PBSci website. Same thing, but I was able to get tab navigation working for the drop down. So this is, I'm just navigating this whole thing by the keyboard. Drop down's open, and I can skim through all the links. It's a real interesting thing to try. I won't belabor the point, but just try navigating an entire page through the keyboard. It can be eye-opening.
Okay, yeah, you guys, we still have some more time. And any questions you have do not need to be related to accessibility. This can be, web related, any questions you have about kind of, I already told you my favorite color, so that's off the table.
Did you? I didn't hear
I
it.
sent an email with the agenda saying you can ask us anything, but I'll tell you my favorite color is green, so you don't have to ask that anymore.
Did I just outed myself as not having read to the bottom of the email.
No, so yeah, so we're totally open for questions. You can message me privately if you want to be anonymous with it, and then I can read it out, or you can just unmute yourselves and ask questions.
Tony has his hand up.
He does. I don't see his hand, but yeah, go for it, Tony. Are you going to unmute yourself and ask, or do you want to chat it to me, or I don't see a.
This is Rosa from Orientation.
Hi, Rosa.
Hi. I have a question regarding the use of videos that are hosted on YouTube that we post on our website. One of the challenges that we have with students who are in China prior to coming to UCSC is we have videos that they can't access. So I want to know, if we post them on our website, does that allow them to have access although they're on YouTube? Because right now we get around that by making PDFs of the information with images to provide to them, since they don't have access directly from YouTube. Is there a best practice for that?
If you want to go, I have thoughts, but go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was gonna try to repeat back what I think I heard. It's like, yeah, YouTube is not available in China, probably because of the Great
Correct.
Firewall, and so that means that images embedded on our web pages, YouTube videos embedded on our web pages are not accessible to visitors from China. Is there a way around that? The only way I could think would be to host the videos also on a service that is available to folks living in China.
Also, you could, if ideally Unicorn Land, your videos are captioned. And so if there's a way to actually take the text of the captioning, and that would be a way to, if they don't have to watch a video, but they need the content in the video, that's another way around that. But yeah, that was my thought, was just if they can't actually see the video for whatever reason.
Yeah, so right now what we do is we make PDFs of the text and put images in for the students, but I wanted to know if we can get away from that, because we have hundreds of videos and we make a PDF for each of the videos.
Wow.
My first thing would be to see if it's possible to host it somewhere else that's available. Offhand, I can't say I know. I don't. We haven't run up against that problem. Although you're reminding me that we put YouTube links on the homepage. So I don't know the way around that, other than to find a host that'll allow videos to be viewed.
And we don't have anything locally at UCSC that we can access?
Not video hosting. No, yeah, we don't have a UCSC video host. I am just wondering if there is. I have so many questions about this, because because I haven't actually considered that or thought about it. Like, yeah, there might be reasons why people can't actually see videos in certain countries, and I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of make anonymous where the video is hosted from. That, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's even a possibility.
Yeah, they can't access any Google products.
Rosa, we have the same issue with online education. This is Jennifer from Summer Session. So for online classes, like students from China want to take a class online in the summer from home, and the Canva has the same thing. We use Google products. So we have a workaround for it, and I can send you the contacts for what we're doing for online education.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Jennifer, in a nutshell, what is that? Is it a hosting service that China's good with?
Yeah, or they will we'll send them the links. We'll send them the videos directly to just download. We'll send them all the content. I don't know the exact process because I haven't been the one who's physically been doing it, but for online classes, we've been doing outreach to make sure we find the people that are going to be taking them from outside of the US and then make accommodations for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Eye-opening.
So I have a different question. I've been hearing comments that we might be getting a quote different WCMS system or a different, I don't know what it's called. Is that true? And also, what should we know about that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I was waiting for that question. I was like,
I know. I was hoping someone asked it, but yes, we are. We will be moving to Drupal as a CMS, our web CMS. And the timeline is a little bit unknown, though it's kind of come all the way to the top, like we were going to do this. So I'm working with a few people on, defining actually how we do that, how we move from one to another. So, and then I'm sorry, Rose, what was your second question? So yes, we are moving, and then
just the plan so that we can start thinking about when it's going to happen.
Yeah. So we're working on the plan, but one thing that you can be doing, because I don't know exactly when, but I don't even want to say when, like a year or whatever, you will be asked probably to start getting your site ready to move. So you don't have to worry about that right now, but what you can do now is start, and maybe Lisa and Rob, you can talk to this a little bit better, but kind of start looking at your current site and really organizing it, cleaning it out, and getting rid of, stuff that you don't want to move. Maybe rethinking kind of like what your message is, who your audience is. And I'm not the expert on that. I just know, like, when it comes time to move your site, you would be moving what we used to back in the day. You would say you're moving your very full, unorganized garage, full of cobwebs and black widows, into a new system, and you don't want to move all of it. So, there's going to be some work on your part to kind of start. So anything you can do ahead of time to really start inventorying and making sense of and organizing your site now will just make that process a little bit easier, because it's not just a, pick up and dump it in process. It's not going to work that way. So.
Yeah, I would add, it's not going to get dropped on you with like 3 months and you have to do something. Right. It'll definitely be a thoughtful, timely process. What we'll probably start with is some kind of like recommendations like this about how you can audit your existing site. One of those things would be accessibility. Another thing would be identifying your key audiences. A third thing would be your communications goals. Who are you trying to reach, and how are you trying to reach them, and what do you want them to do when they come to your website? Those kinds of things help you think through your existing site and what your new site will need to be for you. And then some more practical things are also content inventory. What's on your site now? Where, what's in the nooks and crannies that maybe you don't need? Maybe you have old images or old image galleries, those kinds of things.
Geek out on your Google Analytics, seeing what.
Yeah, Google Analytics is another thing. So basically like a holistic understanding of how your website exists today, how you want it to exist in the future, and then who are the people that you're trying to communicate with. And we'll probably provide a bit more documentation around a process like that in the coming months. But I would say it's not something where, before the end of 2020, you're going to need to like dump your whole site and start over. It'll definitely be a time, there'll be plenty of time to think about it.
But thank you for asking the question, because yes, there's been simmerings and rumblings, and it's just like we are moving. But we will have still the same service that we have right now for the campus WCMS for Cascade. we're not going to like discontinue service and leave you in the lurch. Like we're still going to have that, you know, until we don't have any more sites there, and then, you know, we'll remove it. So no worries about that. But
I have
And
a
can I just add that that the work that Teresa outlined and what Rob just said can't be underestimated in terms of working on that in advance.
Yes.
So what your content is, all this marketing stuff that we're going to actually help with a bit of a roadmap and best practices like Rob mentioned.
Yeah.
But working on that's really at the root of making a successful website, is all that pre-planning work before you get into the design, before you get into making things digital. So so keep that on your radar.
Yeah. So we had another question. We were asked, is there an online based image tool to resize or reformat images that you can recommend that for especially for student workers who don't have access to Photoshop or something similar? They said it comes up a lot, other than the WCMS image editing tool inside, you know, which is not that great, let me just say. Yeah, so there are tons of free online tool image, you know, editing, you know, PicMonkey, Pixlr, there's a whole bunch you can look, but actually Rob's team, or maybe it was even just Rob, has a really cool tool where you go to this tool. Rob, you can show it, where you basically like say, I want to create a billboard, and you click billboard and it says, okay, put your picture in it. And then it just basically allows you to crop the picture to the exact pixels for all those different template sizes. Very quick, very easy. And I used to show it in my classes, but I don't have my classes anymore. So, so Rob, do you want to show them your?
I'm trying to make sure I could still get there.
Yeah. I linked to it. It's actually in the WCMS help site under working with images. There's a link directly to it where we provide a link to that where people can actually go do that. So that's to kind of do a quick resize and a crop. But if you're looking at for tools to be doing layers and, you know, effects and all that, that's not the tool. You can use something like, you know, Pixlr or PicMonkey or, you know, whatever. There's a ton. I use Pixlr as kind of my default one, but I'm sure there's other people that use other things.
My internet has slowed to a crawl and I can't pull up anything. So I can't pull it up, but there is that. I'll put them, I'll just make a note to put it in. Put it in the show notes.
Show notes. So question from Lisa Eric. Yes, we are recording this, so we will send that out. And Tony says Preview and Max has resizing built in. Thank you, Tony. And then, yeah, there's a link that Rob put in there. Yeah, GitHub link. Yeah, so PicMonkey's go to, Pixlr is a go-to. Also, Daria in the chat, thank you, Drupal for Dummies. I literally, seriously, I'm gonna buy that book because I need to learn also. And not that she said, not that you guys are dummies, but she found it very helpful. And I actually started watching, you know, videos on Drupal and kind of, you know, there's a ton of stuff out there. So, YouTube, you know, just YouTube. You have cycles and time, just know that it's coming down the road. And as you guys are site managers, you're kind of accountable for sites, it's going to come onto your plate at some point. So, you know, all the things that me and Lisa and Rob have kind of suggested, just, you know, start getting organized, looking at your website, becoming really familiar with what's really in there, what's needed, geek out on your Google Analytics, and that sort of thing.
Can I ask you two more questions? This is Rosa again.
Yeah.
One question is, do you know if Drupal has the ability to have web pages that need a login? Like with the WCMS system we have right now, I have an internal web page that only the staff access. Do you happen to know if that's going to be something that's available?
Like authentication for different parts of your site? I think, I don't know, actually.
I would say it's like we can write it down as a wish list item.
Yeah.
Can't say for sure
Yeah.
offhand.
And then I have another question. I feel like it shouldn't be this complicated, but I've been trying to delete folks that I have added as managers onto the site, and they still appear. I don't know if they still have access to the website as managers, but I want to be able to delete them, but I can't figure it out. I can't figure out how to do it.
You can't delete users, but you can remove them from your site.
Okay.
So there's instructions on the help site about how to remove a user from your site. And if you go to WCMS help under that account management, it's a step-by-step, and it kind of screenshots and shows you how to do that. If that's still not working and it's still they're still showing up, then just put a ticket in and we can help it. So right now there's a little bug where the user account management, where people are added or they're removed, sometimes in a rare case those don't get refreshed, and people, there's a workaround. So
okay, thank you.
Doing that, just put a ticket in, we'll walk you through it.
I just wanted to mention too that even after someone is removed, if they were the last one to edit a page or upload a file or whatever, like their history within your site will remain. Sometimes if they're removed from the system entirely on the ITS end, there will be a line through their cruise ID. But if they're not, they're just not a part of your site anymore, their history on your site will still remain. So it may still look like they're an editor on a particular page, even if they're not. But again, removing them, going through that step to remove them is a good idea.
Yeah. And Daria chimed in, thank you Daria, with the answer about Drupal. She said currently undergraduate education has Drupal forms that do require authentication to log in, so it is possible. So it's possible, and then we'll see if we can build that in to our new service. So so we've got 5 more minutes. Any final questions, or going once, going twice? Okay, so again, this is recorded. We'll send out the show and our show notes with links to all the things that we talked about. And again, this is not the only time you can ever ask questions. Please, if something comes up, just email us, and we're a community. That's the whole idea of this group, is that we work together, we help each other out, we answer questions, so please feel free to utilize Rob and I for that. And then also, if you know other people on this group, if you're saying like, oh, I know this, we're all helping each other. So yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that it's a user group. It's not the Rob and Teresa show. So anyway, okay, well, thank you everybody. Have a great afternoon, and we'll send out stuff in a bit. Okay, bye-bye.